Going on, all you Forward fans out there? Welcome to another episode of Fourth and Frames, the offense edition here on Wednesday. Here, we normally do our show at 8 p.m. Eastern, but you know what? Stuff got in the way, so here we are at 9 p.m. Eastern. Thank you very much for tuning in, and thank you for listening and downloading wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards. With me, we got the Frame Screw right around here. We got Nate Markham, Brian Ford, Tyler Heil. If you have not gone and checked out their waiver wire article yesterday, I know waivers have already cleared, but let's say, for example, you're still lacking at certain positions here on your roster heading into Week 11. Nate and Tyler can get you hooked up on which players to potentially or which players you should be targeting and going out there and trying to acquire. Nate getting you ready on IDP, and then Tyler for offense. Great job. You can head over to fantasyandframes.com and check out all of their articles, as well as all the articles all the writers here at Fantasy and Frames crank out each and every week for you to help you win your fantasy football matchups. Brian, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. Had a long day. Definitely tired. Lots of stuff on the plate today, but this is always a nice escape, a nice pick me up. Good to see your faces and good to talk fantasy football.
Likewise. Tyler, how are you doing, buddy?
Oh, man, I'm wonderful. I'm just happy to be here.
There you go. And Mr. Markham, how are you doing, sir?
Very well. I agree with the other guys. Nice to get together and talk a little football.
No, I hear you. So before we get into, our Oklahoma. Well, I'm thinking about IDP shows already. Before we get into our flex off matchups and prime matchups, we're going to get into some news and notes. And let's start with some news. We were just talking about this, or rather, I was just talking about this in our pregame show about Elijah Mitchell. Broken finger, has a screw in his finger. No timetable on a return. Kyle Shanahan. It's funny. The past couple of days, he's like, yeah, so Elijah had surgery. This is yesterday now. Elijah had surgery, but I think it'll be good for Sunday. Today, it's like, yeah, he's got a pin in his, finger. He didn't practice today, but I don't think it'll be good for Sunday. Like, what is this coach speak? More importantly, is it coach speak? 1, 2. Should people be trying to acquire Jeff Wilson as quickly as possible, Brian?
I think he was a good waiver ad this week. I've seen him on a few waiver lists. Some of the deeper leagues I play in, he's already rostered. If you're really thin at running back and, it might be good to try to maybe swing a trade. I think the price might be reasonable. I think he's a guy you should be looking at, yeah.
Now, in the event that Elijah Mitchell does end up starting this week, has he reached the point where, and I know he didn't have the greatest statistical output against the Los Angeles Rams, but is he somebody that we've got to the point of the season where, like, if he's starting, you're starting him in your RB1, RB2 slot, Tyler?
I believe so. I mean, just his level of work, it's going to be his volume of work, rather. It's hard to find anywhere except for a top 10 running back. So, you're running the ball a lot in Kyle Shanahan's offense. You're averaging 5+ yards per carry. I'm going to play him in my RB2 slot. I know Jeff Wilson will steal some of his work right now, but I'm rolling with him until he proves me wrong.
And speaking of you, of course, you're a resident Cleveland Browns fan.
Mm-hmm.
Baker Mayfield came out today and said, "I am beat to you know what." Basically, this is the worst beating I've taken in my entire football career. You name an injury, he's probably got it. He's probably has some injuries that he's probably not even disclosing right now. Sticking with the Cleveland Browns side of the ball, last week there was no Nick Chubb. Right now, I think he's questionable. I don't think it was COVID, right? He's not on the COVID list anymore, if memory serves me correctly. So he should be good to go this week. So this is definitely helping one of my fantasy lineups. Kareem Hunt could be out at least another week, but he's trending in the right direction.
He is out another week for sure.
He is out another week. So here's the thing. Let's say Nick Chubb isn't going to play this week for some reason, some horrible, horrific.
Let's not say that.
Horrific reason. I know, but I know I shouldn't put that out into the ether, but I'm putting it out there. There was concern that Dearness Johnson last week going against the Patriots, going against Belichick. Belichick's going to take away the thing you do best. He still had 99 yards, and he still put up a pretty decent game in half PPR and PPR scoring. If for some ungodly reason that Nick Chubb does not play this week, how confident are we in starting Dearness Johnson, Nate?
I mean, again, it's you have to assume they're going to try to run the ball 60% of the time. They're not going to pass. If Baker's that beat up, and volume's going to be key in any matchup. And you always have to assume the defense will try to keep will keep the game close. Not try. I think they'll be in the game the entire time. And realistically, Dearness Johnson's done nothing short of, as soon as I started talking trash, like in week 7, he, I mean, it wasn't talking trash. It was, I went back to last year, and expectations were not 22 for 146 and a score. So, yeah, I think that we could see 20 carries again if he plays. I don't even want to start playing around with this. Nick Chubb's not playing. Don't put that into this.
I'm sorry.
And thank you.
I apologize. That was my mistake.
Another matchup there too. It's against the Lions. You absolutely.
Well, that's exactly my point, right? Like, if there is any concern about him, why bring him back versus the Lions? Okay, I'm gonna stop putting it out there. Let's put it out there though. My Washington football team upsetting the Super Bowl champions on Sunday. Full disclosure, I took a nap after the 4-eyed pregame show, and I woke up as the 1:00 games were ending, and I go on Twitter and I see, like, oh my God, Washington's about to pull off this upset. I'm like, what are you talking about? I swear I woke up in an episode of The Twilight Zone. I had no idea what was going on. I had to ask my wife repeatedly, is this real? Is this real life? Like the kid in that commercial, is this real life? That's basically how it was. Of course, we lost Chase Young, so that kind of gives me some pessimism going forward. However, for Panthers fans, they got Cam Newton. He had a few plays here and there, 2 of his most prominent ones. His first play was a rushing touchdown. His second play was a passing touchdown. Yay, Robbie Anderson fans. We were joking about this in the 4-eyed pregame show with David from Connect Go. I wonder if Cam Newton will resurrect Robbie Anderson's fantasy value. Well, for that one play he did. I don't know if that's going to be the case going forward. But, Matt Rule has already come out and said that Cam Newton is going to be practicing with the ones, getting all those first-team reps heading into last week. That being said, I actually was kind of impressed with PJ Walker last week, even though he was spending time with Cam Newton here and there. He played pretty well. He was PJ Walker, XFL PJ Walker, who's performing well. I don't, obviously with the money they're paying Cam Newton, you have to follow the dollars. I think, Nate, you were alluding to that a little bit on Sunday. So, of course, he's going to be going forward. Their starter, more, assuming things are going that way. How comfortable are you? Obviously, in a super flex situation, Cam Newton, yeah, why not? But going forward, Nate, how comfortable are you with Cam Newton as your starting quarterback?
Well, Cam Newton is my starting quarterback. My team's pretty much screwed from the get-go. That means because I lost someone of significant value if I'm starting Cam. I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of the only value. His upside, his ceiling is is an extension of his legs. I don't believe his shoulder. As far as I could throw the ball, Cam could throw it. I mean, he might be able to throw a little further, but not by much. But I don't see the upside short of that work around the goal line, which is what we saw in the limited plays. And I know that's what everybody's going to do. Oh, they're going to extrapolate 3 plays. Man, just imagine if he gets the full workload. It's just not going to be the same. And maybe I'll be, putting my foot in my mouth and eating my words, but I don't see him finishing as a QB1 the rest of this season from this point forward.
So, Brian, let's talk about Week 11 specifically. And let me use a very realistic example as one that I'm currently facing. No Matthew Stafford. Rams and Broncos, I believe, are on the bye this week. So if you had the option of Cam Newton versus the Washington football team, Tua Tagovailoa versus the Jets, or Derek Carr versus the Bengals, out of those 3, which quarterback would you want to roll with in terms of streaming option?
Give me Tua. I think he gets way too much hate. It's a good matchup. He's got Waddle and Gesicki to feed. I'm probably the most confident in Tua, then Carr, and for me, Cam would be last of the 3.
See, that's perception is reality, but then again, so are statistical and historical accuracies and facts. They're also reality as well. Referring to, of course, Cam's play last year with the Patriots. So, yeah, no, it's a great story if you're a Cam fan, if you're a Panthers fan, and you're living through nostalgia, and it's like, oh yeah, this is, you see on Twitter, on the different social media sites, it's like, yeah, I was always pro Cam, and we're all the people who are anti Cam now. But you know what? Where we are, we're going to be in the forefront this week when it doesn't exactly work your way, or when that happens going forward. So that notwithstanding, in terms of other news, nothing is jumping to mind. For IDP, which by the way, for the next couple weeks, we're going to be off the IDP show for the holidays coming around. But we will be back after Thanksgiving with Mike Wollert for 444. So tune into that. But going forward, looking at the offensive side of the ball, Alvin Kamara returned to limited practice today. He missed last week. Mark Ingram, of course, had his 18 half PPR fantasy point game, 20 point PPR game last week. Seeing Mark Ingram go to Baltimore, have his success there for that season, then kind of get downplayed because J.K. Dobbins was there and Gus Edwards was there. Go to Houston, which is why of all places, but then getting traded to New Orleans and then setting the Saints Saints all-time rushing record. That, for me as a fan, just of players in general, that was fun to see. That was a lot of fun to see. Obviously, as a fantasy manager who has Mark Ingram in his roster, that was also a lot of fun. But I don't know, just in terms of warming the heart there, that was a good moment as a football fan. Does anybody have any other news or information that we could talk about, or should we get into prime matchups?
Just I think real quick, come just off the top of my head, going through my rosters, it looks like Saquon and CEH will probably be back this week. So.
Interesting. You mentioned CEH. I may be talking about him a little bit later in a controversial manner. Hint, hint. But that is going to be interesting. But I did see somewhere that Andy Reid said that they wouldn't be opposed to holding out CEH past week 13, which I believe is coming off of their bye, if memory serves me correctly. But that is something. Darrell Williams, filling in. I don't want to say admirably, but he has been filling in here and there. So if we got nothing else, let's get into prime matchups for the week. And so let's go with. Go ahead.
Well, hold on. Nate's got a report from the trenches.
Well,
sorry. No, thank you. That's exactly right.
No trench talk. Yeah, it's worse than the trench talk. Is Aaron Jones is out potentially.
God, yes, right.
I mean, the top 5 running back. We might want to mention him, and AJ Dillon probably in his absence will be an easy RB1. I say easy. I think so. And then a little lesser news. I say lesser just because it's Jeremy McNichols, but Adrian Peterson versus Deontay Foreman. Sounds like Deontay Foreman's probably going to be the lead back against Houston. That seems like a pretty positive spot. Make sure I'm not touching on anybody that we're do these flexes. If I don't want to give anybody any arsenal or any advantage, so I'll shut up.
You're good.
Tyler mentioned very importantly, Le'Veon Bell has been released. Rest in peace, Le'Veon Bell. Somehow.
Did anybody else feel bad about what he changed his Twitter bio to? I felt a little bit bad about the guy. I'm like, I hope he's okay. Am I the only one who has compassion for a human being?
I didn't see it.
Okay. You did not see that, what he wrote? He's like, I guess I'm this, basically negative this, negative that, negative this, negative that. I guess I'm all those things, right? And then apparently people like Nate and Brian are like, yeah.
Hey, you got to worry about people's mental health, I mean, Le'Veon Bell made a huge mistake with the Steelers 5 years ago and kind of sent his career down a downward spiral. And
5 years ago, that's crazy.
And then he, leaves the Chiefs, and what does he do? The first thing, he talks shit about Andy Reid and the city and the staff. Probably not your, if you cross one bridge, it stays intact. Barely in Pittsburgh. He crosses the Three Rivers Bridge, whatever the hell the name of that one is, and then comes to KC and burns another one. So probably not the best thing to do.
Hey, the only other piece of news is Damian Harris did clear concussion protocol. So even with Ramondre's big game against the Browns, I'd still fire up Damian Harris.
How you feeling about that, Brian? Which, by the way, great call.
Yeah, I mean,
on the pregame show for Ramondre last week.
Yeah, he's back to being a backup in a committee. The smaller slice of that pie, and as long as Damian Harris is there, I expect that to happen. But it was good to see him perform last week.
Got a question from David Ibrahim. Yeah, hey guys, long time listener, first time caller. Yeah, love that. Tight end question, full point PPR or full PPR, 12-team league. Dalton Schultz or Gronk. And again, this is, of course, if Gronkowski plays
Okay.
going against the New York Football Giants.
Gronk
First of
playing.
all, this Giants Tampa Bay game on Monday night, this has offense and IDP written all over it. I love everything about this game. If I could pick all my players from this game to a certain degree, especially from the IDP side of the ball, I would be completely happy. Assuming that all the players for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on offense were completely healthy, which we still don't know if that's going to be the case. But assuming if they were, this game, oh my God, I'm so excited about this. So yeah, making the decision. Dalton Schultz versus Kansas City. It's going to be a high-powered game, a high-powered offensive game versus the, like I said, the Bucks and the Giants. Brian, who do you got here?
See, that's a tough one. I think he gave us a tough one because Schultz targets are getting eaten into with Gallup back, and so you have to worry about that. Gronk could go off any week and really hit the end zone twice. Schultz by a hair. Yeah,
that's a good point.
Is
So
Gronk
thank you,
playing?
Dave. What's up?
Is Gronk playing?
He's in practice today.
Technically questionable, but see, I mean, he's practicing like they just said, so it's heading in the right direction. So assuming both guys are healthy, I guess is how we should preface that. So thank you very much, David. And if you're not following David at Fantasy Go NFL and his company at Connect Go, you should be. Great resource, great website over there. So head over to Connect Go today. And okay, let's get into our prime matchups here. We, of course, every week we look at a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end who we are very high on in terms of their matchups specifically for each week. So for week 11, let's start with the quarterback position. Nate, what do you got for us today?
Yeah, and this is probably a 1 week, even maybe for the rest of the season. Mack Jones against the Falcons. I do like Mack Jones as far as an NFL quarterback for what he's doing. He's winning ball games. Maybe not exactly the most fantasy-friendly variety, but if you look at the Atlanta Falcons, I mean, Atlanta's allowed the third most points to opposing quarterbacks. He's coming off the best finish he's had. He was QB4 last week against Cleveland, which is actually kind of saying something to me because it's not like he's coming off a QB4 matchup against the Lions or the Texans or even a high potent game, a back and forth because New England's defense doesn't always give him that opportunity to be in one of those shootouts. But maybe this week it does a little bit more. I know Atlanta's coming off that, crap fest that we saw last week, but Matt Ryan's at home. Matt Ryan at home, as we all know, much more beneficial. And the team's defense actually at home has, the Falcons defense at home with Matt Ryan trucking the ball more has led to a QB6 and a QB5 output so far on the season. It's also had Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold sprinkled in there. So if you look at the season as a whole and you put those 4 games, you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt just because of Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold's ineptitude bringing it down. But I like what I've seen. I think that there's a chance that he throws the ball more than the 19 times, maybe somewhere getting close to 27, 28 times. And if he has that 65 to 70% accuracy that he's had about every game, I think that could turn into a decent low-end QB1 on the week.
Nice. So I'm going to go with the running back position. And Nate, this is a game that's near and dear to your heart. Dallas Cowboys versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Tony Pollard. I can't begin to describe how impressed I am of Tony Pollard this season. Yes, from a fantasy perspective, his numbers not been super. Like he'll have his good weeks, he'll have his bad weeks. But just watching how involved he is in that game, in that offense for the Dallas Cowboys, how I feel like he just does a really good job of just like he's like the glue. He's the glue of that running game. He's the glue of that offense, keeping them balanced, whether they're passing it or running it. Really big fan against this Kansas City Chiefs team. I feel Tony Pollard is going to do what Kenyon Drake should have done on Sunday Night Football versus the Chiefs. The Raiders did not do anything in terms of using their running backs in an effective fashion against Kansas City, which we thought they were going to do. I thought Kenyon Drake was a for sure primetime matchup this past week rather. because of the Chiefs' inability to keep the fantasy points in check in terms of the running back position. That just was not the case. I think Dallas, their offense is a little bit more fine-tuned and more reliable, that you can count on a lot of these weapons for Dallas to stay in a good matchup with Kansas City, which, we saw Patrick Mahomes get in his groove again, like Stella got in her groove again, which, wow, I never will ever make that comparison between Stella and Patrick Mahomes. I'm so sorry, Nate. I don't know where that came from. But the point is that the Chiefs looked like the Chiefs of old last week against the Las Vegas Raiders. And the Dallas Cowboys, they bounced back from their, trumping by the Denver Broncos by just utterly annihilating the Atlanta Falcons, keeping their foot on the gas. And I just see two high-powered teams just, colliding with each other this week. It basically, this matchup against the Chiefs reminds me of week one, basically. Tampa Bay, Dallas, two good teams, one, and just coming at each other. And I think that's what we're going to get this week. So give me Tony Pollard. I think Dallas is going to employ all their offensive weapons.
What's crazy about that thing is I was right there with you looking at Pollard and Zeke as matchups, and I had to go back. Like, I thought the same thing. I was like, man, when was the last time they've gotten abused on the ground? And I had to go back so far to even find. I mean, week 7, Tennessee, Derrick Henry had 80 yards, and that was like the biggest output. But I 100% believe that Tony Pollard's in like one of the best matchups of the week. I completely agree with you, but I'm hoping that maybe the Chiefs defense somehow has turned a corner, but I don't believe it. I don't trust it.
Of course, but with your favorite safety, Daniel Sorensen, leading the way, why wouldn't they be on?
I hate him. Continue on.
That is heavy sarcasm from my part, and
I know it is.
Yes, thank you. We got the wide receiver position. Brian, who do you got for us this week?
Yeah, so I got one that I don't think a lot of people are high on. DJ Moore against the Washington football team. His lowest target total this year is 7. I think even with Darnold not playing well, he's really only had a few down games throughout the whole season. PFF has him graded out at 74.8 in receiving. Washington's giving up the second most fantasy points per game versus wide receiver and the most versus quarterbacks. They just lost Chase Young in the pass rush. I think the defense will have to account for CMC, and that's going to help open up things for DJ Moore. Washington ranks 29th in pass coverage according to PFF. So really the only question for me is, Cam Newton, right? And we talked about him before as, perhaps not having a great arm. And, I think with the better weapons around him and not being like recovering from COVID, I think we're going to see a better Cam than we saw in New England. Maybe not obviously the Cam of old or the type of quarterback that you want to run out there as your QB1, but I think he'll be good enough to keep DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, and company pretty fantasy relevant. So if you're down on DJ Moore and thinking about sitting him, this might be a good week to start him.
All right, Tyler, who do you got for us at the tight end position?
Well, since we are talking about the tight end position, I'm going to go back to the touchdown well, baby. I'm going to go Tyler Conklin versus the Packers.
Hey.
Oh, yeah. Green Bay's they're not a great matchup. They're not a terrible matchup. They're about right in the middle, fantasy points allowed to the tight end position-wise. Conklin, he is very involved in this offense. He has surpassed 80% of snaps in every game except 2 this season. He is out there a lot. He is being targeted a lot. His last 5 games, he has 5, 7, 7, 5 targets. He is a big part of this offense, especially when you get down into the red zone and the 10 zone. Defenses have an inability to key on Conklin in the red zone. They absolutely have to respect Justin Jefferson. They have to respect Adam Thielen, and they have to respect Dalvin Cook coming out of the backfield. That leaves Tyler Conklin the odd man out, and that leaves him with single coverage, and that leaves if defenses enter a zone, they're fading toward the outside with the wide receivers, or if they're in a man, he does have that single coverage, so he gets that benefit. And Tyler Conklin is actually tied for the 5th most red zone targets among tight ends in the NFL this year. He has 8 of them. So there, he only has converted on 3 of those for touchdowns, and there's no reason why he can't keep going. Kirk Cousins is playing good ball right now, and the Vikings do not look bad. They're playing good ball as well, whether the wins and losses show it or not. If I'm in a pinch, I will absolutely put Tyler Conklin in there.
I picked up Tyler Conklin in one of my leagues, and I dropped Zach Ertz for him the second I saw that Conklin was available. I know, right? It's crazy. I'm right on board with you. I think this is more than just a 1 week thing. I think Conklin is starting to consistently show some chemistry with Kirk Cousins, and I'm all about that going forward. So awesome. Great job, guys. So with that, let's get into our flex off matchups for the week. Let's start off this week. We're going to do the running back position. We have various positions to go over. So we'll start first with Nate versus me. Nate will be in the corner of Myles Gaskin, and I will be in the corner of Michael Carter. So, Nate, let me go first and get this out of the way so you can annihilate me in a few seconds.
Okay.
You're welcome. Just doing my part to thank you and help you out here. Just in case.
Thanks.
Sure. So, Michael Carter. Let's get the I don't want to say big news, but he is tall. Joe Flacco is going to be the starting quarterback for the New York Football Jets. Oh, wow, that sounds horrible. The New York Jets. I know it's the New York Football Giants, not the New York Football Jets. I know. I got it. He's going to be the starting quarterback here. No Mike White, no Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, who they just traded for a couple weeks ago. So I was starting to think to myself, Michael Carter, he's been heavily involved ever since week 7. He's been the main guy. So I thought to myself, what can Joe Flacco do that can help maintain the level of productivity that Michael Carter has in the receiving game? Maybe their average depth of target are similar. Maybe wherever Joe Flacco likes to throw the ball is right in the wheelhouse of where Michael Carter catches the ball. So I went back last year when Joe Flacco was with the Jets in weeks 5, 6, 9, and 11, and I tried to find out what's the average depth of target he was having when he was passing the ball with the Jets. 11.4 yards. Brian, I'm going to ask you, what do you think Michael Carter's average depth of target is this season?
As a running back coming out of the backfield, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 yards at most. I don't know.
I believe the answer is, as my computer is now messing. Oh, that's there. Here you go. The answer is 0.36 yards, which I would not have thought about. Yeah, right. I would not have thought of that. When I'm looking at rush attempts for the Jets running backs, Michael Carter on the season, even though he's been the feature back since week 7, he has 102 rushing attempts on the season. The next running back for the Jets roster has 25. Isn't that crazy? Like, I would have never thought that that's what that would be. But Michael Carter is the offense for the Jets. You go back to week 7, he had 20 total touches for 15.4 half PPR points. Week 8, 29 total touches for 32.2. Week 9, he had his lowest output in terms of touches with total touches with 15. He only got you 9.6 points. Bounced back last week, week 10, 22 touches, 18.2 fantasy points. So when he's getting at least 20 touches or more, he's averaging 21.9 fantasy points per game. On the season, that is the RB number 3 overall production. That's pretty crazy. And you're going against a Miami team that's allowing 19.6 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. Here's the thing. People are immediately going to see this switch to Joe Flacco and say this is going to hurt Michael Carter because Joe Flacco, all he does is throw deep. Here's the difference between here's why you should not be concerned about that. Joe Flacco with Adam Gase is not going to be the same Joe Flacco with Robert Saleh. All right. This 49, it's funny I say this 49ers thing. This Jets offense is basically predicated off the zone running scheme, which is exactly what the 49ers did with Kyle Shanahan. This is where Saleh is coming from. They brought over LaFleur's little brother. to be the offensive coordinator, and Michael Carter is thriving in zone running scheme situations, as I was just telling you earlier. Joe Flacco was just brought up like a week ago, and now he's starting. They're not going to put the ball in his hands. They're going to give it to a sure tried and true thing player that they've had all season, who's earned his right to be the starting running back of the team, who's been playing phenomenal ball, as well as being a really good flex option, and is approaching starting status week in and week out going forward. So give me Michael Carter this week versus the Miami Dolphins.
Okay.
Well, you are going to make it very easy for me, Jorge. I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was going to be this simple. Just throw these notes aside and just tell you. No, I need to. It's not that cut and dry, because clearly Michael Carter has the last couple weeks really proven that he can be dominant with the ball in his hand. What we've seen over the last in that same time frame, though, is that maybe it's trending in the right direction for Myles Gaskin from an opportunity standpoint, which is true. If you look, he has 100 attempts on the season. 46% of those attempts have come in the last 3 weeks. So we're seeing him get the ball in his hands. Now, the problem with that is that he's only averaging 2.2 yards per attempt. I know that that's garbage. I know that stinks. And that makes me sick. What's the medicine for being sick? The New York Jets defense, which allows a robust 4.8 yards per attempt and the fourth most yards on the season. The superlatives could continue to go up and up and up and up. But the fact of the matter is this: they allow the most points to the running back, the fifth most receiving yards to the running back, or fifth most receptions, to the running back position. And Myles Gaskin, shockingly enough, despite what we've not seen, or we have seen, but yet we haven't seen the end result, is that he is getting red zone touches to the tune. He has 18 red zone touches on the season for how many touchdowns? 0. That is the highest ratio, or the lowest ratio, whatever that works out, in the NFL. He leads basically what I'm saying is he has the most red zone touches without a touchdown in the NFL right now. Currently, that should change, because the Jets in the red zone, guess what? They're not that strong. Now, does that mean that they're going to give him the ball? Not necessarily, but 18 touches in the red zone means they're not afraid to do so. Conversely, my concern with Michael Carter is this. You mentioned the production, and obviously as a whole, it is pretty impressive. You talk a little bit about the Miami run defense. Unfortunately, you also use that as a whole. And what we've seen is Miami over the last few weeks now has really stepped up. I think their secondary getting healthy has really helped their run defense as well. They can kind of stay back a little bit, put a couple more linebackers up in the box. Over the last 4 weeks, the Miami run defense, when you talk about stingy, they have allowed a total in 4 weeks of 205 yards rushing and a total of 305 yards rushing and receiving combined. Joe Flacco does not help that case, if you ask me, as far as moving the chains and giving Michael Carter a higher touchdown upside. So give me Myles Gaskin in a matchup that should be controlled from the Dolphins from the onset.
So since Brian is our resident Jets fan, or at one time Jets fan, I guess if that's the better way of putting it, we're going to take the bias. Kind of, sort of Jets fan, a tweener Jets fan. Mm-hmm. We're going to take the bias or unbiased out of his hand. And Tyler, why don't you officiate this flex off? Who made the better argument to start who?
Well, I appreciated both the arguments. I enjoyed Nate's argument, but problem is Nate's argument started with, hey guys, Myles Gaskin really sucks, but the Jets might suck more. So,
actually, by the way, he may not be wrong. I'm not saying he's not going to be right, but I'm saying he may not be wrong. Okay.
I'm going to go with the player that in this one where the person arguing for him didn't say that they sucked, and I'm going to go Michael Carter.
And that's fair. He does. Myles Gaskin is not let's make this abundantly clear. These are random players that we are anointed with that we make a compelling case for. So regardless, I think that we'll be surprised though. I actually have Myles Gaskin ahead of Michael Carter on the week though. Yeah.
If there's ever a week to start Gaskin, it's this week, right?
Right. I mean, exactly. That's why we take these flex offs as we do. And we're not like it's like we're saying we're anointing these players to be rest of season
hell
studs.
No.
Hell no. It's all about matchups. It's all about performance. leading up to these matchups is looking about the opportunity. A lot of different factors and variables we're taking into consideration as we're talking about flex offs for just this week.
I hate myself for what I'm about to say. So,
what's up now?
I hate myself for what I'm about to say. Speaking of undrafted players, so
fair enough. Well, let's get into then our next round of flex offs here. We're going to take the wide receiver position by storm. Brian, you are going to be in the corner of Rashad Bateman, rookie wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens, going against the Chicago Bears. And Tyler, you are going to have Kadarius Tony, the Giants rookie wide receiver, going against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Well, since you said, Tyler, you're going to hate what you're going to have to say right now. Basically, you're pulling a Nate Markham for your argument right now.
Not a good start.
Why don't you tell
Let
us
him go first so he can go shower afterwards.
scrub the filth off. Then I got you. Yeah, I got you. Kadarius Tony, why is he a good option for you this week?
All right. So Daniel Jones, he's thrown the ball less than 30 times only twice this year. And he did that in week 9 before their bye. And that was against a floundering Raiders team where they got a defensive touchdown, and somehow the Raiders were letting Devontae Booker run all over them. So this week they're playing the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers coming off that absolutely, horrifying loss to the Washington football team. A very big thing for the Buccaneers this week is they are slated, not for sure yet, to get Antonio Brown back. And that offense did not look the same without Antonio Brown. And if he is back on the field and healthy, I see the Bucs going right back to what they were doing, putting up a lot of points. And the Giants are going to have to throw the ball a lot. Daniel Jones is capable of throwing the ball 50-plus times. He's done it already this season. It seems like there's a high likelihood that Sterling Shepard is not going to be playing again this week. So there are a lot of targets to go around between Kadarius Tony and a fellow that's going to be mentioned later in these flex offs. And it's very possible that Kadarius Tony could see 10-plus targets. This Bucs defense gave up 36 points to the Jameis Winston, Trevor Siemian 1-2 punch, and they gave up 29 to Taylor Heineke. I don't see why Daniel Jones couldn't hit 30 right now. The Bucs defense is struggling. They are very hurt. Their secondary is very thin right now with the injuries piling up. If someone can help me here, I'm not sure if Levante David is back this week. But
should.
Okay. For you while you're going.
So sure, but yeah, Levante David being back won't help Daniel Jones. But yes, there's going to be a lot of opportunity. There is going to be a lot of points scored in this game. It's one of the higher over-unders of the week. It's 49.5 points. I believe it's tied for the third highest, and it's a primetime game. So, I see a lot of points getting scored and Kadarius Tony getting back involved, and hopefully he can see that performance that we had about a month ago of 100-plus receiving yards, 10-plus targets, and a touchdown.
Nice. All right, Brian. Rashad Bateman. Why should you be starting him this week?
Well, let's talk about Kadarius Tony. He is, I think, a somewhat divisive player. I think the NFL scouts liked him more than the fantasy community did coming into the draft and coming into this season. He has shown flashes. That game, I believe it was against Dallas, where he went 10 for 189, showed some good separation against some pretty good defensive backs. Other than that game, he really hasn't done much. He had one target against the Raiders. Saquon's probably back. He's going to take touches from everybody. And with no Vita Vea for Tampa Bay, Saquon and company are going to be able to run better and try to keep Tampa Bay off the field. They're the 12th most points against wide receivers, so still the bottom 50%, but not as bad as the Bears are against wide receivers, which we'll get to in a moment. And, I don't know where Tony fits into all this. Shepard may or may not play. Saquon's back. Ingram, Rudolph. Where does he fit into this offense? What's his role? And I think they've had trouble finding a role for him. Tampa Bay is going to be hungry and angry after that loss to Washington. They're going to want to come out in a primetime game and just light things up. And I don't think they're gonna let the Giants get much life on the field. So let's talk about Rashad Bateman. The passing volume is up in Baltimore this year, and he's shown that he can coexist with both Hollywood and Mark Andrews. Chicago is the 5th worst against wide receivers when it comes to fantasy points per game. His targets in the games that he's played have been 6, 6, 8, and 8, and he's had 2 games of 80 yards. PFF has him graded at 73.7 on receiving, and Chicago, they have graded as the number 27 team in coverage and 18th in pass rush. So there's going to be fewer forced scrambles for Lamar. So I think, it's not going to be where he's getting RB1 carries, and I think he's going to be able to distribute the ball. And Bateman looks good, and he looks like he's getting trusted. He's making some good catches, moving the sticks. I think I trust him more than Tony this week. Give me Bateman.
All right, Nate, who's taking the winner? Who's taking this one?
So the one area that I think is of concern for the Giants is the fact that Tampa, when you look at their home road split, is actually it's incredible just how bad they've been on the road by comparison to them being at home. They're on both sides of the ball. That's offense and defensively speaking. They're 4-0 at home, and I mean you're talking about a 26 point per game net spread between home and away appearances, offensively speaking. And defensively, they have basically just shut teams down. Now, there have been a few plays where they've allowed a big play, and I get that you're going to allow the occasional big play, and it's going to skew some of those numbers. But as a whole, I mean, they've given up the 23rd lowest opposer passer rating in that time, and I think that with Kadarius Tony already seeing concerning amount of touches, we know the upside, the ceiling is there, but in this case, I'm not judging on the ceiling. I have to go with my floor, considering if it's a flex. Most times or not, I'm looking for a solid floor more so than the ceiling, and I got to go with Rashad Bateman if I'm going to go for my floor in this case.
All right, very good, very good. Let's get into our next matchup here. Actually, before we get to our next matchup, let's answer B-Dub's question right here. Kadarius Tony, Brandon Ayuk, or Rashad Bateman rest of season? Tyler?
Ooh, I absolutely love Rashad Bateman rest of season.
Me too.
Lamar Jackson has been an improved passer all year. I've been starting Rashad Bateman on one of my teams for the past 2 weeks just because I believe in him. And he is a hell of a player. And when they need a first down, that's who they're looking toward.
Yep.
And I believe he's going to see that opportunity increase the rest of the year. And he has yet to get in the end zone, and he will.
Absolutely. Added the fact that Marquise Brown wasn't at practice today with a thigh issue.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And so with him missing today, now granted, they think it might just be a recovery day. He'll be okay. But I mean, a thigh injury for a speedster like that, you just have to think that this is just trending upwards for Bateman.
Absolutely. All right. So thank you, B-Dubs, for tuning in on YouTube. All right, let's go to the next matchup. It's not exactly a quote-unquote flex-off per se. I guess one of them could be considered a flex position. The other one may be somebody who you're normally starting week in and week out. But we thought, hey, you know what? These have appealing names, and therefore you're probably going to pay attention. So therefore you're tuning in. So therefore, thank you. And we're just going to get to it right now. We're going to take Antonio Brown. Brian, you're going to be in his corner.
Mm-hmm.
And Nate, you were going to be in the corner of Mr. Amari Cooper versus your Kansas City Chiefs. This is all premised on the fact that Antonio Brown being good to go 100% against the Jets, that was
my argument against.
Well, let's assume
cross that off.
Let's assume that he's good to go. Brian, why should people be excited to start Antonio Brown if he is good to go against the Giants.
Yeah, you alluded to it when you were introducing this. I'm kind of doing this under protest because Antonio Brown's a flex, but if you drafted Amari Cooper, I mean, you have him in your wide receiver 2 spot probably, but I will indulge.
Thank you.
And do this. So Antonio Brown against the Giants. Giants are about middle of the pack versus wide receivers fantasy points per game. So not a tough matchup. The defense has to account for Evans, Godwin, maybe Gronk this week. Fournette's been getting targets out of the backfield. And, assuming he's healthy and plays, he's fresh. He's had a few weeks off. So he doesn't have the wear and tear that, some of these other players do. And the last game he played, he was loaded with 13 targets. Again, I think I like the narrative of that the Brady and the Bucs are hungry and angry and want to come out and light up the scoreboard. He's always had good chemistry with Brady. New York is ranking 20th in coverage and 25th in pass rush, according to PFF, while Antonio Brown has an 86.3 receiver rating, according to PFF. So he's been playing good when in the game. As far as Amari Cooper goes, you'd think, at Kansas City, they've had some trouble defensively this year. It's a good matchup. Maybe, maybe not. They're still number 10 against wide receivers in fantasy points per game. They're actually worse against running backs. So I think this is going to be a big Zeke and Pollard day and not a whole lot of the pass catchers for the Cowboys. I think they're going to try to keep Kansas City off the field a little bit. I don't know that it's going to be the shootout that people expect. And other than the two and this is Amari Cooper's MO, other than the 2 boom weeks he's had, he's been pretty mediocre the rest of the year, right? And I think the defense still has to key in on him and Lamb. So he's not going to get freed up the way that Antonio Brown is like one of more options, and will get freed up with the defense keying in on the other guys. So give me Brown this week.
Yeah, and like I had was going to go with for the AB, obviously still not practicing today, with this ankle and this heel, and that was the easy go-to of why would you start a person who might not play, but that's low-hanging fruit, not really fair, because AB does have good chemistry with Tom when they're playing. Fact of the matter is that the Giants, while have been in down spots and unfortunately have given up some yards through the air and just not as bad as we think. I mean, the secondary is definitely one of the more dangerous out there. And if we've seen the one thing that's hampered the Bucs over the last 2 weeks, is we would think that they would have come in hungry last week too, right? I mean, they were coming off of a loss, so it's not like they came in off of a 47-12 shellacking. So you think they would have been as hungry against Washington, and they put up an absolute dud. And Brady has been the culprit of this, and I don't believe that it has entirely everything to do with AB being there or not. But the Giants, between James Bradbury, Darnay Holmes, and then Adoree Jackson, probably is the most dangerous secondary that Brady's faced in the last month. Washington was giving up the most points to the opposing quarterback going into last week. Brady was the smash play of the week, and he smashed his car into, that's probably not good reference, just talking about car crashes, but whatever. Who cares?
Wow.
It is what it is. That's what he did. He crashed his car, and it was a wreckage. And this week, I think the same thing can be said. Again, it's hard to always say or anything with AB being healthy, because are we giving him full clear health? Is his ankle not bothering him at all? Is that heel not bothering him at all? Is he okay? The answer is going to be no to that. There's no way he's questionable now, not practicing. He's not going to jump in at 100%. Amari Cooper is as close to 100% as you can ask for. That's a good little safety blanket. CeeDee Lamb did get banged up in the game last week. I know that he mentioned that it was probably, they thought it was a contusion, bone bruise at first, turned into maybe just a Charlie horse. I'm going to, if I wanted to err on the side of caution and try to win this debate, I would say I'm cautious about CeeDee Lamb playing and, talking superlatives, but that's not really fair. The one area that Amari Cooper that I found, if I find a little silver lining in his weird season that he's had so far for your, most people's wide receiver too, is the home and away splits. Listen to these. Amari Cooper at home has played 5 games. He has 15 receptions at home for 243 yards and 2 touchdowns. On the road, in 4 games, he has 29 receptions for 340 yards and 3 scores. What is it about him getting outside of a dome and playing outside on grass? I don't know that answer. But some people just come to play. They run their routes crisper. They have a better advantage against the defensive back when they can, work into his cuts, and he's a great route runner. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe his route running on grass outside is better, and he gets the defensive back off kilter. I can't tell you exactly, but what I can say is that those numbers are staggering. 1 less game, 6 and 80 per. That's a wide receiver 1. Especially if he's averaging nearly a touchdown per game. And the final piece to this is I feel like we're going to, we won't know until the game's over, but we've had a couple different conflicting things. And as much as I want to think that the Chiefs are bad against the run, and they are, if you look at the numbers from the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, when Nick Bolton was just getting acclimated to the NFL, getting his legs underneath him, Willie Gay wasn't healthy yet. But if you look at the last few weeks, what do we see? We see against a Raiders team that's not necessarily the most dangerous on the ground, but they're really good. They allowed a total of the leading rusher was 16 yards. If you go back the week before, the Chiefs in a matchup that we thought would be just absolutely Aaron Jones central, right? Aaron Jones, 53 yards, 4.4 yards per. A.J. Dillon had 46, so they combined for that. Like I said, you had to go back to Derrick Henry. I think we're going to find that they're going to have to air it more than we're anticipating. I see Dak throwing the ball 40 times almost, and Amari Cooper being the recipient of 20% of those targets.
Wow. You want to talk about not making it easy to figure out which one you want to go with this week. Again, I'm going to keep my decision based on the fact that we're even keel here.
Yeah.
Not playing the whole Antonio Brown injury, yada yada yada. Man, you both make good points. Brian, I love the fact that you mentioned look, Antonio Brown, Tom Brady, they have a connection. Hell, they had it that 1 week when he was in New England. They've continued that on during his time in Tampa Bay and throughout the season up until he got injured. But you still have the concern with Mike Evans. You still have the concern with Godwin, who did play last week. And if Gronk does come back this week, it makes you wonder, multitude of targets being funneled to 2 receiving options. Is it going to be Brown? Is it going to be Brown and Gronk? Is it going to be Brown and Evans, Brown and Godwin? You pick your combination there. On the flip side, you go to Dallas. You have Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, JJ Zachariason, who he's been on the podcast with us once or twice. Great guy. He put out a tweet. Apparently he puts out these tweets every Sunday before the Sunday Night Football matchup, which I just found out this week, where he gives you advanced statistical information based off of the games that came on. And he was looking at snap percentages or target percentages for each game of interest. And so he was looking at the Dallas wide receivers and how CD had the team lead in those percentages. But number 2, the receiving option was Michael Gallup. Which I thought that was very telling, just because of the chemistry that Gallup has had with Dak Prescott over the course of his career, especially his first game back too. That was was not prepared for that. I would have sworn Amari Cooper would have been the guy to go to there. The real question is, I think for me, when I get into a decision, and like you fantasy managers out there, when you're trying to make a decision about, you have these 2 options on your roster, for example, and you have these great options and they both have, the upside here. How do you differentiate between the 2? Well, sometimes it's best not to look at necessarily who you got, but who they're going against. And so my concern here is now, okay, well, which defensive matchup is really going to scare me off the most from starting a player? Is it the Giants defense, like Nate, you had just brought up? The secondary is going to be one of the toughest secondaries that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have gone against in recent weeks, or if at all this season, versus Kansas City and their secondary. It's tough. It's a tough one, but I'm going to lean towards Nate's and Amari Cooper just for that reason. I feel like he has maybe the easier matchup in the secondary versus the Chiefs and Antonio Brown does against the Giants. But that was hard. That was a really tough one. I think you both have. If both are honestly, if both are good to go, it's an embarrassment of riches, right? Like if you're starting one or the other, if both are equal playing field here. So yeah, that was really.
And
good.
I accept your under protest declaration, Brian. I believe that can be a draw as far as I'm concerned because of that. But I will say I am blown away just with the splits though to see if this is a trend that continues. Because if it is, then
that is weird.
There's no way you can't just pick up. He's not a waiver wire fodder guy that, he's great at home, bad on the road where you can pick him up because Cooper's not that type of, he's not a player that's available. But I don't know how many more games he's played 5 at home, 4 on the road. So he clearly has more away games left than, it'd be even because they're going to play this week away. Damn it. This is 50-50.
Nate, I feel like that is a trend throughout his entire career. Don't quote me on that, but I kind of want to look that up because I think that is pretty consistent for him.
Well, then I'll tell you what. I can do one thing real quick, and we can get into the bust section of this podcast, and I can do my bust of the week since it's a quarterback, and then in the meantime, I can quit paying attention to you guys, and I can focus on Football Reference and find those splits. I'm kidding. I can do both. I can listen and do that at the same time. Nice. So the crazy thing is that my bust, before looking at ECR, I thought, all right, I didn't know he was going to be QB 18 and everybody else feels the same way I do, is that Carson Wentz, despite being the QB 4 over the past month, I mean, he's obviously been trending in the right direction and everything's, coming up roses or coming up Millhouse. Isn't that what they say? Thanks about Carson Wentz. The matchup against the Bills is just too tough to overlook. Yeah. I mean, if you look back on the season, he's given up 1 QB1 week. That was week 3 against Taylor Heineke. He's given up 2 QB2s, 3 technically, I apologize. And the rest have been as low as the QB 38 on the week against Davis Mills and the Houston Texans. Yes, their defense made you the QB 38 in a 32-team league. So I'm going to say Carson Wentz. Hopefully you don't have to start him. You have better options. But if you do, well, find a better option. And now I'm off to Amari Cooper land.
Fair enough. And since we're approaching the hour time mark, we got 2 more flex offs for you. But you know what, folks? We're going to keep you on the edge of your seat waiting until the 4-Ed pregame show on Sunday.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. No, you're good. Had you not mentioned that, I would never have looked at the timer and been like, oh, crap. Right. So just to give you an idea of what to look forward to, Tyler and I are going to go head-to-head, and I'll be in the corner of David Montgomery. He'll be in the corner of Antonio Gibson. And we got a special flex-off question that one of my coworkers asked me. Connor, if you're listening, thank you very much for supporting Fantasy and Frames and the 4th and Frames podcast. He wants to know, who should he start, Kenny Golladay or Brandon Ayuk? Gross. But you know what? I guarantee you he's not the only one who has to make a gross decision like that. So stay tuned for us on Sunday on the 4-Ed pregame show to hear all of those flex-off options as well as other options for you to start your week for week 11. Nate, you just mentioned our busts. Let me go to the running back bust of the week, and this is definitely going to be a polarizing one. Give me Saquon Barkley. I don't care that he's had this time to rest. I don't care that he's this all-worldly, generational, injury-prone talent. Oops, did I say injury-prone talent? I didn't mean to say that out loud, because we're not supposed to say those things out loud, because that then comes back and haunts us. Going against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they present to Barkley as I look at my Scrabble, the 6th toughest matchup against running backs. Tampa Bay, the pass rush. I don't trust this pass blocking unit of New York. I don't trust anything about the New York Football Giants on offense. You might as well call them the Little Giants. And whatever plays they run Saquon Barkley with are going to be the plays utilizing the annexation of Puerto Rico. Well, I just killed that joke completely. I'm so sorry. But you guys know where I was going with that. Mm-hmm. Anywho, Saquon Barkley, I don't think you're going to see that that high floor that you're looking for. You look at various platforms for half PPR scoring, whether it's Sleeper, whether it's ESPN, Yahoo. They all have him ranked in the top 11, top 12 as far as like, oh yeah, it's Saquon Barkley. Of course, Saquon Barkley should be getting you these points this week. I don't see it. I see this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team not so much from an offense, well, not just from an offensive perspective, but I think this defense, if anything, is going to really put the clamps down on what the Giants, do best, which is not much. But given the fact that Barkley is their best player, look for them to take away that. So that is my bust for the running back position. Brian, wide receiver, who do you got for us?
I got two. I'll be brief on both. I'm going to piggyback on Nate here, and breaks my heart because I really do like him a lot. But Michael Pittman at Buffalo, they're giving up the least points against wide receiver. I think they're going to really try to run the ball with JT, even though Buffalo is still good against the run, to try to slow down the Buffalo offense. And Deontay Johnson at the Chargers has the second worst matchup for wide receivers in fantasy. And again, I think they're going to try to feed Najee against a bad Chargers run defense. So you might want to pivot to something like, I don't know, Emmanuel Sanders versus Indianapolis or Jacoby Myers at Atlanta.
Yes, and Tyler for tight ends.
Well, I had a hell of a time deciding between two very good tight ends. It was between Darren Waller or Kyle Pitts of who's going to bust harder. And I'm going to go Kyle Pitts just based off matchup. At least Waller is playing the Cincinnati Bengals. And, it's not a great matchup. But it's also not the New England Patriots, who are very well known for taking away what one team does best. And the thing about Kyle Pitts is he's not only the one thing that the Falcons do best, he is the only thing that they do even marginally average.
Nice.
With Cordero Patterson out, it's all Kyle Pitts. They are going to bracket him every single play. They're going to hit him at the line. They're not going to let him get into his route. They're absolutely going to harass Kyle Pitts up and down the field all day on Sunday. And, I mean, it's hard to say to bench him because you very likely do not have a better option unless you're looking at someone like Hunter Henry on your waiver wire.
Mm-hmm.
But, I do not think he's going to have a good game at all on Sunday.
Fair enough. And that's going to wrap up Fourth and Frames, the offensive side of the ball edition. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening, wherever you're listening to the podcast or wherever you've been watching our live stream on Wednesday. Nate, as always, great job. Brian, Tyler, as always, great job. We will be back with you on Sunday for the Forward pregame show. Just a little programming announcement for us people here in the States. We're celebrating Thanksgiving next week. We will not have Fourth and Frames next week. We will have the Forward pregame show, though, for that weekend heading into week 12, but no podcast next week. We're going to spend some time with our families and friends and enjoy some time off. And so, yeah, you do the work, folks. You figure it out. And then once you realize that you need the good old family friends here at Fantasy and Frames, we'll be here for you heading into week 12 to get you ready. So, yes. So for that being said, I'm Jorge. Thank you, Nate. Again, thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Brian. We'll see you on the Forward pregame show. Take it easy, folks.